As always, welcome to the class. I am Ann Forrest. My email is seattleprepares@gmail.com, and I am thrilled you are here. So we're going to talk about communicating after an earthquake. We'll go through the steps of what happens after an earthquake. So you have dropped, covered, held on, you are safe, but the shaking has stopped. What do you do? So these are your steps. You're going to check on people and pets around you. You're going to control your utilities, which we talked about last week. Gas, shut it off if you smell that smell or if you hear a gas leak. Electricity, you're going to shut it off if you see damaged wires or you smell insulation burning. Really, leave the electricity on unless you think there's a reason to shut it off. And then water, always shut off water because you don't know if there's any damage to the pipes outside of your house. And if there is, which there probably will be, you will be pulling in contaminated water into your house and you don't want to do that. So always shut the water off, because if you were wrong and there's no damage to the pipes anywhere from your house to the water storage area, then just turn the water back on, no biggie. So the next things you're going to do, and this is just kind of what we emotionally need to do, we need to make contact with the folks that we are closest to, whoever that is in your household, whoever your significant others, your partners, whatever, the important people in your life. You're going to want to reach out to them, find out how they're doing, and let them know how you're doing. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. And we're also going to talk about how to get more information, because information will be scarce. There will sadly probably be a lot of bad information. We want good information and we want it as quickly as we can get it. So we'll talk about that. So contacting family and friends, as it is really common after earthquakes or any kind of big disaster for folks to call 911 just to say, was that an earthquake? Not because they need first responders, but just, I'm really scared. What was that? Please do not call 911. They are going to be overwhelmed immediately, and the people that truly need their services need to be able to get through. And if you're mucking up the phone lines, hey, was that an earthquake? That's a problem. Some people still have landlines, not many. It's getting less and less all the time. Have to let you know that very, very few landlines are actually landlines, which means there's a copper wire from your wall to the phone company. And it never breaks, and your signal is never sent out over internet. Those are very, very rare, less than 10%. So check and see if your landline is truly a landline. It's probably not. The way to do that is to contact your service provider and ask them. And also, if you've had a power outage and your phone doesn't work, you do not have a landline. You do not have a true landline. There's not copper wire from here to there. Landlines seem like a good idea, but very few of us here in the city of Seattle actually have true landlines. So texting is probably your best bet. And the reason for that is texting is a tiny little packet of information that will swirl around in cyberspace and eventually get delivered. It may take a while. It may take a couple minutes. It may take a couple hours. It may take a couple days, but it will hopefully eventually get there. Using a phone, so calling with a phone, whether it's a cell phone or not a cell phone, a landline, as soon as you hang up, you have stopped your ability to communicate. So really, texting is really the way to go in disasters. You always want to text information. When you do text after a disaster, you want to put the date and the time in every text that you send, because you never know when it'll get actually delivered. So keep folks up to date on what's going on and make your message count. So I've got a sample on the screen. Oh my God, what was that? Are you okay? Where are you? What do we do now? That's what we want to write, but that's not helpful to anybody. So what you want to send is something like this. I'm home and I'm fine. The pup is fine. I'm checking on neighbors, but I'm staying put. It's 4:25 p.m. on a Tuesday. That's the kind of information you want to send. What your condition is, where you are, and what you're going to do. I'm staying put. I'm walking over to a friend's. I'm walking home. I'm coming to pick you up. Whatever your plan is, let them know in the text. Make it a worthwhile text. The next thing I want to talk about is the out-of-town contact. And this person is super important, not just for earthquakes, but it could be helpful in a lot of different situations. So this person relays messages back and forth between family members that are here on the ground in Seattle or King County, whatever. The reason for that is sometimes it's easier to get a text out of the city to, hundreds of miles away than it is 4 miles away across the city. So you use this out of town contact person as a way to relay messages back and forth to people on the ground if they can't communicate with one another. This person needs to be in Spokane or further east. So that kind of distance, Spokane, Washington, or further east. You don't want to go Portland or San Diego or Vancouver, British Columbia. You don't want anybody on the coast. Our out-of-town contact is my mother-in-law in Las Vegas. So she knows exactly what we want her to do. We've practiced with her. It works really well. The other thing you want to do with this out-of-town contact person, besides tell them what their job is, which is just to relay messages, they don't have to change the texts. They just take them and they forward them on. The other thing I have my mother-in-law doing is contacting people that are really close to us, like my mom. She's not on the internet. She doesn't do email. So I would like her to be called. My mother-in-law should talk to my mom and say, we've heard from Ann and the rest of the family and everybody's fine. I'll let you know more as I hear more from Ann. The other thing they can do for you, besides contacting other folks, is they can post on your social media sites. As long as you have some kind of social media presence, they can go on there and just post and say, hey, I heard from Ann and the family and everybody's okay. There's also a website, and it stood up whenever there's a disaster and you're in that area. And this one's called Safe and Well, and it's put on by Red Cross. If you have access to the internet, you can go on there and check that you're safe and you're okay. And then folks from all over the country, all over the world can go to the Red Cross website and check on you so the folks know you're doing okay. And then if there's something else your out-of-town contact you would like for them to do for you, ask them. I couldn't think of anything, but maybe you can. Maybe you'll come up with something. I'm sure they will be happy to help out. So that's your out-of-town contact person. We need to talk about what happens if your cell phone drops, which is not uncommon. Everything's bouncing around on the desk and it falls off and it breaks. And most of us have all of our phone numbers programmed into the phone and we don't know them anymore because they're all on, instant dial. This is one of your things for homework for this week, is to write down all the important phone numbers. And that's whatever you think is important. Neighbors, definitely neighbors, landlords, your kid's school, your out-of-town contact person, because you probably don't know their phone number at all. Your employer, your pet sitter, somebody's house who you might walk by when you're leaving work and headed home. If they're halfway between you and your house, then maybe you need their phone number. You can text them and say, hey, is your house okay? Are you okay? Can I stop by and maybe grab a bottle of water? Think about things like that and put those phone numbers down on your this list of phone numbers. So Cairo is the emergency radio station for our area, and also Como. And I put those on your note list. For some reason I didn't put it on here, but anyway, spend some time in front of the TV writing down all these phone numbers, throw them in a plastic bag, make multiple copies, and put them in lots of different places, in your purses, in your glove box, in your commuter bag, in your backpack, whatever you think you might have with you when you're away from home. Put those phone numbers, carry those phone numbers with you. So that's on your to-do list. Off-grid messaging. It's very likely that cell phone signals and Wi-Fi and probably even power will be down for a while after a large disaster. So these are ways to communicate even if there is no Wi-Fi signal or cell phone signal. The top picture is how we typically communicate with our phones. We use cell phone towers. The bottom one is what's called the mesh network, and it's really where one phone is talking to another phone. That's kind of the mesh network. And in some of these products, your signal can jump from phone to phone until it gets to the person it's supposed to be to. So instead of having cell phone towers in between you and your partner, you have other people's phones, and your signal bounces off of other people's phones to get to that person, your ultimate destination. I don't have a lot of information about these, and I'm not convinced that they're going to work. They have a very short, they don't travel very far. It's like 50 feet from you to the next phone. So your signal is only going to travel every 50 feet as long as there's a phone that it can jump off of and keep going. They're not super reliable. Everybody would have to have, in this case, Bridgeify, which is one of the apps on their phone, would have to have it turned on, and that's the only way your signal would bounce from you to whoever it's intended. Everybody has to be using the same one. I used to suggest FireChat, but I'm fairly certain they've gone out of business, so now I'm suggesting Bridgeify, which tells me right there that I think the chances of these actually working are slim. And then this is another sort of off-grid messaging device. These two little devices, the GoTenna and the Beartooth, are devices that work with your smartphone to forward that message on. So there's just two names you can look into. They pair with your smartphone so that you can talk to others using these same devices. So it's texting only. You can't make phone calls doing this, but you can get GPS location, even if there's no cell phone signal or Wi-Fi. It works with any iOS or Android smartphone. The range is 1 to 6 miles, really depends on the terrain. And they're pricey, $180 to $250 for two of them. And then there's always satellite phones. These are actually, I think the ones here are all satellite texting devices. So I don't know that you can actually call, but you can certainly text. There is a subscription, and these are meant for you are way out there in the middle of nowhere and there's no cell phone signal anywhere, because they're using satellites to communicate. This is not cell phone signal. This is not mesh network, anything like that. And radio, and we're talking ham radio, GMRS radio, and FRS radio. I'm not going to go into detail much about radios tonight because that is a class all by itself. But the pros of the radios, and these are amateur radios. These are not like, your radio that you tune in to listen to music. They don't need cell towers. They work on different kinds of towers, and they will work when the phone lines are down or when the phone lines are overwhelmed. They run off of batteries, so even if your power goes out, they still will run as long as you have battery power for them. They can be mobile. And the cons are they're a little pricey. You do have to get a license for most of them. And again, I would go over that in a different class altogether. They're a little cumbersome. It takes a little bit to learn how to use them, but not much at all. And then at some point in the near future, I will teach a separate class on GMRS specific, on ham and GMRS radio. Another way, and hopefully you've done this already because this was on your to-do list, probably the first class, was sign up for Alert Seattle and Alert King County. When the city can get information out to you via text, this is the system they will use. And they will send out big, big pieces of information like boil your water. We believe the water lines have broken and your water would be contaminated. So boil it for 1 minute before it's drinkable. Or this bridge is down, or this hospital is accepting emergency patients. This one is not, they are closed. So big information will come through these two systems. So sign up for Alert Seattle and Alert King County. Don't forget your local emergency radio stations, especially Cairo. Cairo has special things in place to keep it broadcasting even if there is an emergency. I know most of the radio stations would like to stay up and running, but Cairo and I believe Como both are really working hard to make that happen. So they've really hardened their transmission abilities. So make sure you have those stations written down, unless you listen to Cairo and Como all the time, in which case you probably haven't plugged into your radios. Don't forget local television stations. They might still be running and you might be able to get information about what's going on, just local television. And then emergency communication hubs, which we will talk about in class number 6. You can definitely get information there about what's going on in your community. So stay tuned for that one. Go through the early earthquake warning system. And this has become really important just recently. We'll go through some of that. As you can see on the screen, there are two different kinds of waves when it comes to earthquakes. One is a P wave and the other is the S wave. The P wave comes out faster, it travels much faster, and it doesn't cause most of the shaking. Most of the shaking comes from the S wave. So thankfully, that's how earthquakes roll out, because that makes it possible for us to detect that an earthquake is happening and give folks a little bit of warning. So P waves, first and fast. Animals are more sensitive to P waves, but they can't tell an earthquake is coming days or weeks ahead of time. It is just seconds before you and I could feel it. S waves cause more of the shaking. The early earthquake warning system needs 4 different sensors. So the earthquake has to hit 4 different sensors in order for them to, I want to say triangulate, which doesn't make any sense because it sounds like that needs 3 sensors, but 4 sensors to triangulate, figure out where the earthquake is and how strong it is. And then it takes about 3 seconds to detect that quake, generate alert, and then it takes a little more time to get that information to us, the people, or the manufacturing plants or whatever. We'll talk more about that. So I'm going to play this video and hopefully the sound will work.
With even a few seconds of warning, Shake Alert can save lives and reduce injuries by alerting people to take a protective action such as drop, cover, and hold on. Shake Alert further protects people and infrastructure by triggering automatic actions, such as slowing down trains to prevent derailments, opening firehouse doors so they don't jam shut, and closing valves to protect water systems, and to stabilize equipment during life-critical situations. How does Shake Alert work? When an earthquake occurs, seismic waves carry energy in all directions away from the epicenter. P waves, similar to sound waves, move quickly through the ground, followed by the slower and generally more damaging S waves and surface waves. Sensors detect the seismic waves and send that information to a Shake Alert processing center, which requires that at least 4 sensors detect the earthquake. If the earthquake fits the right profile, the USGS issues a Shake Alert message. Distribution partners then produce and deliver an alert to people and trigger automated systems. Alert delivery can be before, during, or after shaking from S waves and surface waves. Alerts can be delivered to people through apps designed for cell phones and other wireless devices, over public address systems, TVs and radios, and by FEMA's Wireless Emergency Alert System, WEA, which is also the source of Amber Alerts. For every earthquake, there is a region near the epicenter where alerts will not arrive before shaking begins. That's because close to the epicenter, the P and S waves are too close together, and the Shake Alert system needs time, often just seconds, to estimate the earthquake's magnitude and shaking levels before issuing a Shake Alert message. That means that people close to the earthquake epicenter might not get an alert until after the shaking has already started. Those farther away from the epicenter could receive more warning time before shaking arrives.
So we'll talk about how the alert gets to us. The wireless emergency alert system, it is similar to the Amber Alert. I believe it's a little bit different because it's faster. I don't think the Amber Alerts are that fast. Anyway, so the USGS, the United States Geological Services, they are working with cell phone companies basically to get these alerts out to our phones. Your phone has to be compatible, and you have to be in the right area, and you'll get a text. And if you heard that sound, it's very, very similar to an Amber Alert. It's that same noise. So all alerts through the wireless emergency alert system sound the same. There's that weird notification, there's the vibration, and then you get a text on the front of your phone. So that's in place, or it's getting in place. One of the things on your to-do list for this week is to make sure that the wireless emergency alerts are enabled on your phone. You do have to opt in. That's my understanding, is you have to opt in. Go figure out what kind of phone you have and follow directions and see if you can't get that enabled on your phone. So that's one way that the messages will come out. Another way is mobile apps. And they're not here yet. They're coming. The USGS is still working with partners to figure out how to roll this all out. But you do want both just to make sure that you get notification. California's had this system for a while. Oregon went public in March and ours starts in May. So currently we have 65% of the sensors in place. So we are still not, we're just over halfway there. We need a lot more sensors. They will continue placing sensors out in the ocean, up in the mountains, all kinds of places until late 2025. So we literally are just a little over halfway there. The more sensors we have out there, the more information we get. The faster we get the information, the more accurate information we get. So the system will just continue to get better. The USGS is going to do a webinar if you're interested. It's during the day. It's 10 a.m. on a Thursday, so it's not super convenient, but it is going to be recorded. And I will, once that is done, I will send that out in a newsletter through the Seattle Prepares Gmail address. I'm going to play just a little quick clip of this video. Watch the teacher. These kids are trained. Man, as soon as it starts shaking, they are under the tables. And this teacher does not react as well.
Don't let yourself be convinced to do something that you know is bad, and then even try to share something.
With even a few.
So he stood up, walked over to the table. He really only got under the table, I think, because the other kids were. And I'm not dissing on the teacher. It's just interesting how adults see the practice that kids get, and we don't get that kind of practice. So be one of those kids. As soon as you feel it start shaking, drop, cover, and hold. That's really what you need to do. That's why they're working on this early earthquake warning system. Is not to give you time to run out of the building. It's to give you more of a heads up to get underneath that table. That is really what you're supposed to do. Drop, cover, and hold on. I want to show one more video. This is an interesting one of an office building in Japan. It's hard to tell, but the building has started shaking. I'm going to go on from that video because it just goes on like that. I thought it was really interesting that they run out. So many people do that. It seems like it's a very natural tendency, but please fight that instinct. Do not run out that building. I don't know if you caught it in that video, but I would bet money that one of those guys' hands is broke because he's lunging towards the door and the earthquake throws him onto the door. It looked like his hand was right there in the door jamb. It just makes me cringe. So if you get the emergency alerts, get underneath the table, drop, cover, and hold on. Do not run out of the building. So class next week is make a plan. And what does that mean? And then we'll talk about making a get home bag. And this is just stuff you really ought to have tucked in your car or under your desk at work if you're going to work to get yourself home safely and with as much comfort as possible. So that's April 7th at 7 p.m. That is next Wednesday. That's all I have. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and take questions.